Imagine this. You're sitting alone in a quiet room, the soft hum of the world outside muffled by your thoughts. The silence is almost suffocating, yet nothing seems outwardly wrong. The walls are familiar, the space comforting. But something stirs within you, an unsettling feeling creeping through your chest, a gnawing question you can't escape. Why do I feel so uneasy? You begin to wonder if there's something inherently wrong with being alone, as if the very act of solitude is a threat to your sense of self. It's not that you fear the silence, it's that the silence makes you confront something deeper, something far more unsettling than the absence of noise, the presence of yourself. In this quiet, you are alone, not just in a physical sense, but emotionally, existentially. You feel disconnected from the world, from others, even from the version of yourself you thought you knew. The very foundation of your identity begins to crumble, and the weight of this realization presses in. Without the constant presence of others, who am I? The paradox is clear. You want freedom, space, independence, yet the idea of being truly alone feels like an insurmountable challenge. We live in a world that's constantly connected, where relationships, whether real or virtual, define us. We seek validation from others, comfort in numbers, and meaning through shared experiences. Yet, when stripped of these external anchors, we are forced to face a question we'd rather not answer. What happens when all that is left is you? This fear isn't simply about loneliness, it's about confronting the self. The loneliness we feel isn't just the absence of others, it's the realization that in silence, we meet ourselves in a raw, unfiltered state. We're forced to confront our insecurities, our doubts, and the fragility of our identity. In those quiet moments, the fear of being alone transforms into the fear of truly knowing oneself. You've been taught to look for answers outside of yourself, to seek comfort in the noise, in the crowds, in the distractions. But what happens when all of that fades away? Can you still find happiness and peace in your own company? This paradox, desiring both connection and freedom, yet fearing the solitude that might bring clarity, is one of the most profound challenges we face. But if we want to truly understand the depths of why we fear being alone, we must first dive deeper into the psychological and philosophical roots of this fear. What does it mean to face yourself without the comfort of others? And why, in a world more connected than ever, do we fear the silence more than we fear anything else? The fear of being alone runs deeper than just the absence of company. It is rooted in a complex web of psychological and philosophical dynamics. To understand why we fear solitude, we need to first recognize that this fear is not just the product of external isolation, but is intrinsically linked to an internal disconnection. Solitude forces us to confront aspects of ourselves that we typically bury under distractions, societal expectations, and relationships. It is the absence of external validation that triggers our deepest insecurities, making us question our worth. Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, proposed that the shadow is a key component of our psychological makeup. The shadow holds the parts of ourselves that we reject, often because they are painful or uncomfortable to confront. These are the qualities we deem unacceptable, insecurities, weaknesses, or parts of our identity that don't fit the mold we've created. In solitude, the shadow emerges because there are no distractions or external mirrors to reflect the version of ourselves we want to project. Jung argued that true personal growth and happiness are only possible when we face and integrate this shadow, something that's only possible in the quiet of solitude. Similarly, Friedrich Nietzsche challenged the societal obsession with comfort and conformity. He argued that true fulfillment could only come from embracing discomfort, uncertainty, and individuality. The fear of being alone, Nietzsche believed, is tied to the fear of rejecting society's definitions of happiness, pleasure, security, and external validation. He saw this fear as a result of the herd mentality, the compulsion to conform to societal norms, which stifles individuality and authentic self-expression. To break free, one must be willing to face the loneliness of standing apart from the crowd, a form of isolation that is not only external, but also existential. Jean-Paul Sartre, another philosopher, further explored this idea by suggesting that we are fundamentally defined in relation to others. In solitude, we are stripped of these external reflections and left to face the essence of who we truly are. Sartre argued that this confrontation is both liberating and terrifying. Without the presence of others to define us, we are forced to confront the raw, unmediated truth of our existence, an existential void that can feel overwhelmingly empty and meaningless. This, Sartre believed, is a central reason we fear being alone. It is a confrontation with the absurdity of life and the responsibility of creating our own meaning. From a neurological perspective, the human brain is wired for connection. Evolutionarily, our survival depended on the strength of our social bonds. When we experience isolation, our brains interpret it as a threat, triggering feelings of anxiety and distress. The discomfort of being alone is not merely emotional, it is biological. This deep-rooted fear of isolation, shaped by both our psychological needs and evolutionary wiring, reinforces the challenge of facing ourselves in solitude. In sum, the fear of being alone is not just a fear of physical isolation. It's a fear of confronting the parts of ourselves we keep hidden, and a fear of confronting our dependence on external validation. To overcome this fear, we must first understand its roots in our psychological and philosophical makeup. Only by embracing solitude can we begin to face our shadows, confront societal conditioning, and free ourselves from the need for constant external approval. The consequences of fearing solitude are often hidden beneath the surface, shaping our emotional landscape in subtle yet powerful ways. At first, the fear of being alone may seem like a temporary inconvenience, but over time, it quietly erodes our sense of self and distorts our relationships. The deeper the fear runs, the more it influences the choices we make, leading us into cycles of dissatisfaction and emotional instability. On a personal level, the fear of solitude often manifests as an addiction to external validation. This validation can come from social media, achievements, or the approval of others. When you seek constant affirmation, you set yourself up for a cycle of temporary highs, followed by deep lows. Every new like or compliment brings a fleeting rush of dopamine, but as soon as that rush fades, you're left with the emptiness of needing more. This cycle becomes addictive. Each time the satisfaction wears off, the craving for more external validation intensifies. The danger lies in the fact that this form of happiness is unsustainable, leaving you perpetually unsatisfied and emotionally drained. This external validation trap also feeds into anxiety and depression. Studies have shown that social comparison, especially through platforms like Instagram and Facebook, can increase feelings of inadequacy. The more you compare your life to others, the more disconnected you become from your authentic self. You begin to measure your worth against others' curated images, which often bear little resemblance to reality. This fosters a sense of disconnection, not only from others, but also from your true desires and purpose. In essence, you become so focused on seeking validation that you lose sight of who you are when no one is watching. Culturally, the fear of being alone is magnified. We live in a society that values constant connectivity, external achievement, and social success. Solitude is often viewed as a threat to these values, making us feel guilty for spending time alone. The media reinforces this fear by promoting idealized lifestyles and relationships, making us believe that happiness is a social construct tied to external success. We are conditioned to think that isolation is a form of failure, and as a result, we avoid confronting our inner selves. The more we avoid solitude, the less comfortable we become with our own thoughts, further perpetuating the cycle of disconnection. This collective fear contributes to a deeper social issue, a rise in shallow relationships and increasing isolation. While technology has made it easier to connect, it has also made it easier to form superficial bonds. People may have hundreds of friends on social media, but the emotional depth of those connections is often lacking. These superficial interactions can leave us feeling more isolated than ever, as they fail to provide the genuine connection and validation we truly need. The result is a society that's connected in numbers, but disconnected in substance, where true emotional intimacy is harder to find. The impact of this unseen fear extends beyond personal dissatisfaction. It shapes the way we interact with the world and others. It keeps us locked in cycles of dependence on external approval and success, preventing us from building authentic relationships or gaining true self-awareness. Until we confront this fear and begin to embrace solitude as a space for growth, we will continue to live in the shadow of external validation, missing out on the depth of experience and connection that comes from within. Breaking free from the fear of being alone requires a radical shift in perspective, one that challenges everything we've been conditioned to believe about happiness, connection, and self-worth. The path to this freedom is not simple. It demands courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to face discomfort. But in this rebellion against conventional wisdom, there lies a profound opportunity for transformation. The first step in this rebellion is to redefine our relationship with solitude. Instead of seeing it as an enemy to be avoided, we must begin to see it as a space for deep self-discovery. This shift doesn't come easily. We've been taught to fear being alone, as though it's a sign of failure or unworthiness. But what if, instead of retreating from solitude, we embraced it as a sanctuary for personal growth? What if we could use these moments alone to reconnect with our authentic selves, free from the pressures of society and the distractions of other people? To do this, we must begin by confronting the shadows we've been running from, the fears, insecurities, and uncomfortable truths that we bury beneath layers of activity, social connections, and external validation. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow is crucial here. The shadow represents the parts of ourselves that we reject or ignore because they don't fit our idealized self-image. In solitude, these parts of ourselves surface, and we are forced to confront them. The more we resist this process, the more power these hidden aspects have over us. But when we lean into the discomfort, acknowledging our vulnerabilities and fears with compassion, we begin to reclaim our personal power. This is where Nietzsche's idea of embracing discomfort and chaos becomes essential. True fulfillment, according to Nietzsche, comes from the willingness to step away from the herd, to break free from the pressures of conformity and external approval. The fear of being alone often stems from the fear of being disconnected from the collective, of standing out, of being judged. But when we choose authenticity over approval, we begin to tap into a deeper, more resilient form of happiness. We stop looking for external validation and start creating meaning from within. The discomfort we feared so much transforms from an obstacle into a tool for growth and self-realization. Viktor Frankl, in his profound work, also offers valuable insight into this rebellion. Frankl, who survived the Holocaust, found that meaning in life is not derived from avoiding pain, but from confronting it head-on. It is through suffering and hardship that we discover our deepest purpose. His concept of logotherapy teaches that true happiness is found not by seeking pleasure or avoiding pain, but by finding meaning in our experiences. This radical shift in perspective allows us to break free from the cycle of superficial happiness and embrace the deeper, more authentic joy that comes from overcoming adversity. Taking action is the next step in breaking free. It is easy to get stuck in the idea that we must first feel ready or comfortable before making a change. But the truth is, action precedes confidence. By stepping into discomfort, whether through solitude, vulnerability, or personal challenges, we begin to build resilience and self-awareness. Every small risk, every moment of honesty with ourselves propels us toward a more authentic life. Over time, fear loses its power, and we discover that the very things we once avoided become the sources of our greatest strength and fulfillment. This rebellion is not about rejecting society or running away from the world. It's about reclaiming control over our own lives. It's about recognizing that the power to create meaning, to find happiness, and to define our worth lies within us, not in the approval of others or the pursuit of fleeting pleasures. When we embrace solitude, confront our fears, and take bold action, we begin to break free from the chains that bind us to shallow, surface-level happiness. The rebellion has begun. It's time to step into the unknown, to embrace discomfort, and to rediscover what it means to live authentically. The final realization hits like a lightning bolt, shattering everything you thought you knew about happiness. It's not the absence of discomfort, the evasion of pain, or the accumulation of external rewards that brings fulfillment. True happiness is not a destination to reach, nor a prize at the end of a race. It is the process itself, the journey of embracing every aspect of life, including its struggles and uncertainties. You begin to see that happiness, in its truest form, is not something to be achieved. It is something to be experienced. It is not found by escaping from discomfort or seeking constant pleasure, but by leaning into the full spectrum of human experience: joy, sorrow, success, failure, comfort, and pain. The secret is not in avoiding the difficult, but in accepting it. Happiness is found in the acceptance of life's paradoxes, in understanding that the struggle itself is an integral part of growth and fulfillment. Viktor Frankl's work resonates deeply here. His insight into finding meaning in suffering teaches us that our relationship to pain is what determines our happiness. Frankl's experiences in the concentration camps showed him that even in the most unimaginable suffering, a person could find meaning. It wasn't the pain itself that defined his life, but his ability to transcend it, to find purpose in the struggle. The same is true for all of us. When we stop fearing discomfort and instead embrace it as an opportunity for growth, we begin to unlock a deeper, more lasting form of happiness. Pain, rather than an enemy, becomes a teacher, a vehicle through which we learn, evolve, and ultimately find peace. In this moment of realization, you understand that the key to happiness is not in the avoidance of fear or discomfort, but in the courage to confront it head-on. It is through these difficult, vulnerable moments that you discover your truest, most authentic self. Happiness becomes a byproduct of this authenticity, not the pursuit of pleasure or avoidance of pain, but the willingness to live fully, to experience everything life has to offer, and to find meaning in every step of the journey. The greatest revelation is this: the pursuit of happiness has always been a distraction. The moment we stop chasing happiness as something to attain and begin living as though happiness is already a part of us, we unlock a deeper freedom. This freedom is not freedom from pain or difficulty. It is freedom to experience life without the constant need for validation or approval. It is the freedom to stand alone, to be your true self, and to know that even in solitude, you are complete. As you look back, you realize that the fear of being alone was not about loneliness. It was about self-rejection. It was about avoiding the confrontation with your own truth. But now, with this new understanding, you see that to embrace yourself fully, to embrace your flaws, your struggles, and your imperfections, is to step into a life of authentic happiness. The discomfort you once feared is now your greatest ally, guiding you toward a life of meaning and purpose. The choice is yours. Will you continue to chase happiness, running on the hedonic treadmill of external validation and fleeting pleasures? Or will you step into the unknown, embrace discomfort, and find true joy in the process of becoming? The real freedom is not in avoiding life's struggles, but in embracing them, knowing that happiness is not found at the finish line, it is found in the way you live each moment. Now you are free to write your own story, not one dictated by society, by others, or by fleeting pleasures, but one that is authentically, unshakably yours. Happiness is no longer a distant goal. It is the life you live when you fully engage with every aspect of your being, no matter the cost. This is the ultimate truth. Happiness is not something to be found. It is something to be lived.